Okay, awesome. Welcome everybody to our industry update. I'm so excited to be here with you. I'm just going to share my screen. So everybody hang tight for 1 second. I'm going to put these everybody's faces down there so I can get to what I need to get to. Awesome. Here we are. Cool. Welcome, everybody. I am going to dive right in. I'm so excited you guys are all here with me, and welcome to our industry update for April. There has been so much going on and so much good stuff, and I have been researching like crazy, and I'm so excited to share with you guys what I found, some of the best economic predictions from top strategists and experts, and also some really helpful tools that are going to make a difference for you. I'm confident in that. So without further ado, let's dive in. And I do have to give credit. I got a lot of really great information from NAR, of course, Keller Williams. Thank you to KWRI, Ben Kinney with Place. I was on a great webinar with him that I learned a ton of stuff on, as well as Goldman Sachs and so much else. So let's get into the goods, y'all. Here we go. So as you guys know, I always love to start off every single one of these industry updates just focusing on perspective, because it is so important as you're building your business for yourself, yes, but when you're talking to your clients. And my goal is that you get perspective out of this, that you can feel empowered by, but even more than that, that you are going to your clients as the economist of choice and helping them get clarity and perspective and to be empowered as well. So it's not just good knowledge for you, but how can you empower them in a time where they're getting information from all sorts of places that is probably not all accurate, right? So this is how you get your hope and strategy. I love this quote, and I just think about it all the time. The economy does not dictate your success. It dictates your strategy and how you communicate. That is so important to think about, right? You are in control. The most empowering thing about this industry is that no matter what happens in the economy, there's always still business to go around. And it's, you know, the people that win versus those that don't, in my opinion, are the ones that are willing to pivot, that are willing to find a way. And sometimes that means working harder. Sometimes it means working differently and just pivoting your strategy. And that's what we're going to look at today so that you can be empowered. And just remember that success is a choice. Success is a choice. It is your choice. Let's use this data to change your strategy where needed so that you can move forward in a really, really powerful way. So I was on a webinar the other day and they had this quote: life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but learning to dance in the rain. And then Ben Kinney shared this quote, which I will share with y'all. And caveat, like, nobody get offended about what it says. Nobody, I love animals. So the quote that he shared, but I just thought it was a good point, so that's why I want to share it. The quote that he shared was, if you stop and throw a rock at every dog that barks, you'll never get where you want to go. Now, y'all, we love dogs, so don't take anything like that. We're not actually throwing rocks at anybody. But I want you to think about that. What is he saying? He's basically saying, if you stop at every obstacle that pops in your world and focus on it, you're never going to make it anywhere. And you're going to end up worrying about things that never come to fruition anyways. And what's the point of that, right? Nobody wants to live that way. So in this industry, more than ever, like we've heard, like, be the economist of choice, be the resource for your clients, all those sorts of things, right? But truly, y'all, in this time, more than ever, this is like a must, which I commend you for being on this webinar and empowering yourself, because you must be the economy of choice in your world for your people and understand this stuff for yourself so you feel empowered as a business owner, and for your clients, they're relying on you. And so my goal today is to break this down in a really simple way that empowers you to go and be able to share this with the people around you and continue to pay it forward and pass it on. Is that a deal? Y'all can totally talk to me in the chat, by the way, if you want to. So these are the magic numbers that we always focus on during our industry updates. And I want to encourage you, like, screenshot this, memorize this, put this in the back of your brain, because all the time, at all times in our economy, these are your magic numbers of where you want to be. When our economy sits here at these numbers, 2246, GDP at 2%, inflation at 2%, real estate appreciation at 4%, and unemployment at 6%, we're in a really happy place and things are going well. And so that's where we want to continue to always strive to be. And so I always like to share that, because you could go on Google at any time and go look these things up. What's the current GDP rate today? What's the current inflation rate today? And it can empower you at any time to be able to speak to this with knowledge and confidence with your clients, and just to know for yourself too. One thing that I would think is interesting, so this is from Ben Kinney, and it says, experts believe that while we could see a growth slowdown in the first half of 2024, growth should resume in the second half of the year. They've placed the probability of a deep recession at 25%. That's good news. And I also find it very interesting, because if y'all have been paying attention at all since the beginning of 2024, it has been wacky. Like, I feel like at first it was like things were they were, predicting something just lovely and wonderful. And then things went the opposite of that. And now here we are. And so here's the thing. At the beginning of the year, there was a lot more comments and predictions about a recession coming. And now experts are saying that they really don't see that to be likely at all. The risk and probability is actually very low. Fun fact, in any economy, good, bad, even the best economy, the probability of recessions tends to generally sit around 20%. So that 25% risk of a recession is like basically saying like we're not thinking there's going to be a recession, which is really interesting to know. And I want you to think about that as we're going through some of these slides. And by the way, stay tuned. Make sure you stay on to the end, because at the end I have some really powerful resources and dialogues and tools to share with you that I think you're going to love. So I'm going to get through some of these slides kind of quickly. It is important to think about with a recession, though, as well, that even though a full recession is not possible, an industry-specific or geographic location-specific recession is possible. So think about parts of the country that maybe are affected different than others. Businesses and consumers in general are doing okay, with the exception of one segment of the economy, which is housing. Yep. So, that's important to keep in mind too, that the risk of recession is low. However, if there's going to be any type of industry specific recession, we're it. Because here's the facts. The number of homes sold, which we're going to talk about GDP here in just a second. The number of homes sold hasn't been as low as it is now for 30 years. And mortgage rates haven't been this high for 20 years. So definitely something's happening, right? However, I guess what I want to say to that is, if you feel like it's been a bit hard, like if I'm like, oh, there's probably not going to be a recession, and you're like, are you kidding me? This is awful over here. There is reality to that. Industry specific, geographic location specific. But the positive is that this year is predicted to be better, and we have a bit of a lift coming. So I hope you guys can get excited about that. Take a breath and you're like, right, we're breathing through the hard stuff and we're getting to the other side. So let's talk about GDP. Remember 2246, that means the goal for GDP is for it to sit around 2%. And if you're not familiar at all and you're like, what does GDP even really mean? Which was me raising my hand over here, even though you can't see me. When I first started real estate, I didn't really know much about this stuff back then. But basically you're looking to see if the economy is growing or contracting. It's the measurement of all goods and services consumed by a country minus the difference between imports and exports. Generally, we want GDP to grow on an annual basis. You want businesses to improve. You want houses to be worth more, employees to get paid more over time. That's good. Generally, this is measuring like the cost of money, right? And the growth of our economy. We want it to grow at a rate the consumers can keep up with. That's the tricky part, right? So this is showing you annually. Of course, this is 2023. We ended the year at 2.5. Quarterly, this was the end of 2023. The last 2 quarters of 2023, we were at 4.9 and 3.3%. So we're currently at 3.5%, which is up from last year and last quarter, right? It basically just means if people, number one, would save money and stop spending, it would help our economy. Right? Is anybody else guilty of that? Or am I just chuckling at myself? Like, I need to do that, take that advice. But the interesting thing about it is just the fact that GDP ticked up even in spite of inflation and everything else that the Fed is doing to try to calm spending, is a sign that growth is still too strong. And I know that sounds weird to be like, growth is too strong. But you, again, remember, it's about keeping that growth at a pace that consumers can keep up with without being burdened, right? You're always going to have inflation and price growth, but you want it to be in a rate that people can keep up with. So let's talk a little bit about inflation. The annual inflation rate for the United States was 3.5% for the 12 months ending in March, compared to the previous rate of 3.2%. The next inflation update is scheduled for release on May 15th. So there's really not a lot of change here, honestly. Like, inflation has been sitting around 3.4%, 3.5% for a while. So this is like, basically, this is your predictions, right? Here's your years, down here is 24, 25. So when you look at the end of 2023, the orange bar is showing you if it includes energy and food with inflation. The teal blue bar is without energy and food. But you can see those numbers. Now, of course, they predicted to go down, but we really haven't had much change up to this point. So that is important to keep in mind, right? Our goal for a healthy economy is 2%. So it is important that we get that inflation down, especially when it comes to affordability. That's the biggest place we all feel it, right? I normally look at the orange line because where do we always feel inflation? Energy and food, right? Your gas tank in the grocery store. Not gonna lie, y'all, I went and got lunch earlier at Earth Fare, and they had organic strawberries on sale for $3.99. I freaked out and bought like 4 crates because they're normally $8, and they were, it's a great example of inflation, right? Like, I was like, you feel it at the grocery store. So when you find something great on sale, we take it. Now, this is an interesting graph they shared at Family Reunion that I just wanted to touch on real briefly, but this is inflation affordability in perspective of what it is. What is inflated more than other things? So you can see, Lordy, hospital services are up 238%, tuition 177%, childcare. Who feels me there? Y'all can put a little, prayer hand in the chat for me, or if anybody else is out there paying for childcare, it's not a joke. And so those are some of the places that people are feeling it the most. Basically, going to school and getting sick is where the money's going for people, and interestingly enough, you can look at the green area down here, TVs down 97%. We all can think of the time that, it used to be like $2,000 to get a TV, and now you can get a 7-foot TV for like $100 and something, right? So it's just interesting, and that gives you a clue onto where people are feeling the pain the most. Prices are going up, and you're looking at that continued situation. And I think the other thing to know about inflation that's tricky about this area here is that prices, when they go up, so there's a couple things that you notice. Number one is what we call greedflation for businesses, meaning like people that raised prices a lot of times don't want to bring those prices back down, right? Even if they could, because things have changed. So once prices get there, prices tend to be sticky up. They go up like rockets, as some say, and come down like feathers. So that's an important thing to consider when we're looking at this as well. Unemployment, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this. There's not a lot of news here, but basically, you guys know 2246, the goal is 6%. That's where you want employment to be. Our current is at currently 3.8%. It was at 3.6% in the end of 2023. So almost no change. Generally speaking, as ironic as it sounds to say, if you even got unemployment up to say 4 to 5% unemployment, it would slow down spending, which that affects inflation and GDP. See, it's like a circle, basically. It's also important to think about too, from your perspective as a business owner, if you're thinking about hiring an admin or someone, any type of person in your life, hiring somebody for services, it is interesting because right now you're having to pay more for people, because it's like the people that want a job have a job is pretty much what we're looking at here. And the people that don't have a job, it's harder to get the correct people in the roles that you need, right? Because it's very competitive. So be thinking about building a bench, meaning like, how can I be prepared for that next person? And I would encourage you, look at our calendar, find out when the next career visioning leverage series is going to be at our office. And if you have plans to hire anybody for anything in the next year, get yourself there, because it'll really empower you so you can combat this in an empowered way. Personal savings rate, they talked about this at Family Reunion. I thought it was just interesting. It's not something that we normally look at, but it really is an interesting thing that maybe we all can relate to potentially. So this is where it was in 2023. 4.5%. And look at this, how interesting it is. Like this is your average, right? The dashes right here, the orange dashes is your average is about 8.3%. 5.2% since 2000. You can look at 2020. It's been like a complete roller coaster ever since then, right? Like the crash of 2020, all that cash influx went into the market. And then here we are because people are not saving. That's the interesting thing about the dynamic we have right now is people are not saving enough money. On average in the past from 1960 to 1990, they were saving about 11% of their income. From 2000 to today, it's 5.2% of their income. Basically, people get money these days and get a Peloton instead of put it in the bank. And it's important for us to get that average savings rate back up to create security within the economy and for our industry, right? Because what do people need when they're going to buy a house? They need some cash, right? In the bank. Think about first-time home buyers. Imagine this, if everyone saved just 10% of their income, experts say that basically all problems would be solved in the year. And they'd have a down payment for a house. So it's wild to think about that it could be that difference. But of course, it takes a while to change the course of a large ship. But if you haven't done this yet, I really would encourage you, go get a high yield savings account. The interest rates that they pay on high yield savings are higher than they've ever been. And it is a phenomenal way to get your money to work for you. Okay, consumer sentiment. This just basically is a chart from economists showing how do consumers feel with where we are in life right now in the United States. And so 79% is where it was in January. The great news here is that it's back to equilibrium of how consumers feel about the future of the economy. They're most optimistic about the future, which helps rather than their focus on the current situation, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the interesting dynamic with the GDP, the spending and the inflation and unemployment all being where it is. People are in good spirits. So, which could have to do with why there's still a lot of spending versus pulling back, because people are, I guess, if you will, less scared and more like just moving forward and living their life. So with that being said, let's talk about home sales, y'all. Who's ready to get into it? I see a chat. Let's see. Oh yeah. Thanks, Brittany. She sent me prayer hands for the childcare. Yeah. So let's talk about home sales. So annually, this is our annual home sales. So we're looking in the rearview mirror, right? 2023 home sales were at 4.1 million. In 2024, they project home sales to be at about 4.3 million annually. So you can look all the way back from 89 to now to see the trends and what that's looking like and where we're at. Home sales monthly. This was December. They don't have the stats out for the last couple months yet, but this gives you an idea. 2022 home sales, 2022 is the purple line, 2023 is the blue line. So it was 4.3 million, 03 million in 2022. And like we said, is the lowest rate of home sales in 30 years in 2023. So that's just where it is. And there's good news coming. So stay tuned for another slide after this one. But this is what our home prices annually look like. So we know that home sales have been down, although we do predict it's going to be better this year than last year. This is the graph of home prices annually. Now, this is a really interesting conversation, in my opinion, because I think we would agree that generally speaking, if you talk to anybody out there, somebody is going to say, oh my gosh, home prices are insane and they're not affordable and everything is overpriced, right? A lot of that comes from the feeling of like how quickly everything rose, and with the interest rates being so high, it's affecting monthly affordability, right? However, what's interesting is that when you look at the trend, so this blue teal line right here is the trend line, meaning long-term, home prices should appreciate about 4% every year, just in a healthy world, right? So long-term, if home prices appreciate and go up by 4% every year, we actually should be right here at an average of about 357,000 being the average home price. We're only 9.3% above the trend. Now that's high above the trend, right? And people do feel that. However, it's just not factual that it's like, everything's overpriced and prices are going to go back down. And this is not real life, right? It's been kind of a shock effect, but I've always found this slide to be so interesting to see. And look at this in 08, when there was that real, everybody knows what happened in 06, 07, 08, but in 06 right here, 24% above the trend line. So imagine that situation versus where we are now. So let's talk about home price forecast. Now this slide, and you guys can screenshot this. I'm also going to email the slides out so you can have this for your presentations and just to use for yourself. But this slide is from Goldman Sachs. And I just thought that this was fascinating. So as you can see, they said, we forecast home prices will appreciate by 5% in 2024 and 3.7% in 2025. So first of all, of course, you can look at all of their numbers here and kind of see year over year percentage change that they're predicting. It's right here, Q1, 5.9, Q2, 4.8, so forth, so on and so forth. And then this is 2023, 24, 25, right? And then you can go down here and look at interest mortgage originations as well. One thing that's interesting to look at here is the refinance originations, because of course that is speaking to people that might be wanting to refinance and pull equity out of their home for certain things. And then of course you can look right here in the middle at the interest rate predictions that they're saying. Now you can see they're saying they're predicting interest rates to generally sit around the 6s for 24 and 25. It's better than where it is right now today, right? Like, whew, interest rates are high right now, but that's kind of what the experts are predicting. So you have kind of an idea what to expect. Now, there's more good things to come. So oh wait, hold on. I wanted to talk about one other thing about this really quick. One reason why I said that I think you should, if you want to, screenshot it or look for the email where I'll send this to you, because one thing that this can really empower you with when you're looking at these numbers and where most likely home prices are going to hover, where interest rates are going to sit, all of those things, what's going to most likely happen in the next couple of years, it can really empower you if you think around talking with your clients around the cost of waiting to buy. And you're like, well, what do I say? Anybody ever feel awkward when someone's like, oh yeah, well, thanks so much, but we're going to wait till next year. I think home prices and interest rates will be better then, or whatever. And we're just going to wait. Maybe you have a great comeback, but a lot of times agents get stuck there and we don't really know what to do or say. And we lose that client and they go back in our CRM, right? So what if when a buyer says, I'm going to wait because I think prices will come down in the next few years, you say something like this, wow, that's interesting. I'm curious, where are you getting that data? If I could show you some data from Goldman Sachs that shows that what you're saying is not actually the case, in fact, it's the opposite, would now be a better time to consider making a move. So thinking about how can you use this data to empower you and empower your clients when someone's saying, I want to wait because, interest rates and home prices are going to go down. That's so interesting. I'm curious where you got that information. If I could show you some resources and let's really talk the math here, would you be open to that? So I want you to think about that when someone says they're not moving, you have more power to persuade and help than maybe you think you do. Now, let's look at this next slide. This is really interesting too from Goldman Sachs. This is year over year housing price growth by cities. And so if you think about like what is going on from city to city, this is like what we were talking about geographically, how things are affected differently. And you can go see Charlotte. We're on the list right here. So you can go look right here for Charlotte and see, okay, Charlotte, percentage of serious delinquencies is only 1.3%. That means, most people are not upside down in their mortgage. Most people are not foreclosing. That's a good thing to know about where we're at. 3.2% for the unemployment rate. The vacancy rate for rentals, 0.3%. Medium house prices, 389,000, medium income, 103, so on and so forth, average FICO score. So this just really is an empowering slide to look at comparatively, city by city. If you compare that to say Chicago or New York, it can really give you, look, New York is at 3.3 in serious delinquencies. Where might people be leaving and moving from? Where might things be in more trouble than others, right? So I think that's a really great thing to be aware of and to look specifically at your area so you can empower yourself and your clients with this knowledge. And even for people like, say you have people moving to the area, you can get them excited about looking at, what is or maybe someone's looking at investing. Wow. Well, you're thinking about, owning some rental properties in Charlotte. Well, it's a really healthy place to have rental properties. It's only a 0.3% vacancy rate in rentals, right? So those are all really empowering tools that you can use. I hope this is helpful for you guys. I'm flying through a couple slides here now because I really want to spend some time on some stuff towards the end, but we're going to click through a few of these real quick. So let's talk a little bit about home prices. We just talked a little bit about that. So that shows you kind of where we're at there. The home price annual appreciation, which we just talked about, knowing those numbers and that home prices are going to continue to tick up. Annual appreciation, 12.5%, 20 to 22, only 1.6%, but we're looking at another probably 5% appreciation this year. So you want to keep that in mind. Total market volume in 2023, there was $2 trillion in volume in the real estate industry. Third best volume year in the history of the industry, y'all. Shut up. That is a lot of houses. And there's more agents, which is important to know. We'll talk about that in a second. But 1.58 was how many agents there were in 2022. Now, we will see some exiting from the industry this year, and it is definitely going to be a skill-based market for sure. As far as general inventory for housing goes, you can see real demand is completely off the chart. But what's interesting is there's a humongous demand right now for houses, and the cost of money is expensive, and lots of people are still biding their time. So it is an interesting conundrum when it comes to inventory without a fast solution, quite honestly. The interesting thing about inventory too is that it's not likely to be solved by a lot of new builds that are going to hit the market. So it's just something to just be aware of. We all know inventory is a thing, but oh, I wanted to share this with you too. This is in regard to interest rates, meaning, for mortgages and everything. So the current Fed rates are steady at a target of 5.25 to 5.5%. Now, remember, when we're talking about the Fed rates, that's the rate that the Fed lends to the bank. And so that's not our mortgage rates, right? The Fed gets their own interest rate to get the money to the bank. And then the bank charges their own interest rates for mortgages, right, on top of that. So the Fed had said that it was their intention to make 3 rate cuts in 2024. However, just a couple weeks ago, Jerome Powell made some statements that implied that rate cuts would be further delayed. The next Fed meeting is April 30th to May 1st, so this week, and we'll probably be finding out if there will be a cut coming or not. So we shall see. And with that being said, mortgage rates, based on that, we would all love a cut, right? So of course, the end of 2023, 6.81 is where interest rates were sitting. Today, we're at about 7.8%. I Googled like 8 a.m. and I read 7.8%. Lovely. The historical trend is 7.74%. So technically it's right on trend. However, it doesn't make anybody feel any better because of all the other factors, right? So we would love to get these interest rates down. Honestly, I know Goldman Sachs is predicting that we'll sit in the 6s for the next couple of years, which I think is a great thing. Like, I think if we can get into the low 6s and hang out there, I think it's going to be a really healthy time for our industry. And then this is mortgage rates again that we were just talking about. Okay, now stay tuned. Oopsies, I'm going to talk about this in a second. You'll get this in your slide deck and you can screenshot it, but I thought this was so powerful. This is from Ben Kinney, seller concession cheat sheet for realtors. So it shows you each loan type, what type of properties can be used for that loan, what type of down payment there normally is, what things are allowed as contributions, max seller contribution. So I'll talk about this a little more in a minute, but teaser. We're going to talk more about that. Okay, so a few leading indicators that we want to know about. Leading, right? Meaning forward. So sides per agent. Sides per agent. So that means, a house has 2 sides, right? A buy side and a sell side. So how many sides is each agent getting on average right now? So it's at an all-time low. That's what you're looking at, these numbers right down here. So 2023 is 5.3 sides per agent. They predict 5.7 sides in 2024 on average per agent. The average trend altogether is normally about 10 sides per agent. So why? Well, you can look at the numbers right up here, right? There's a whole bunch more agents that joined the industry. They went from 300 they shedded 338,000 agents. They added 581,000 agents from 2013 to 2023. That's a lot of additional people that are competing for business, which is why it's so important to have your skills on point and be prepared. It's like they say, it's equal opportunity in our industry with unequal reward. The difference, right? What's the difference? Most of y'all on the call probably want to do more than 5 units this year and probably more than 10, I would gather, right? So if you think about that, the difference is the habits and the systems of top achieving agents. A ton of agents this year are going to have their best year ever, their best year yet, and you can be one of them. Just because things look hard in certain parts of the industry or things are challenging or those 5 sides per agent, it doesn't mean that has to be the reality for you. It just means this is where you choose to take market share and take control because you are what your clients need. Volume per agent, 2.69 million was in 2023. They predict slightly higher volume in 2024. Of course, housing prices are going to go up, so that will affect that volume growth as well. In general, it's just interesting to see 2023 was the 6th best year ever for volume in our industry, and we're going to go up this year. So things are good, even though they're challenging. It's a good time. It's a good time to be in real estate. Listings with price drops. This is a great thing to be aware of too. And what you're really going to see here, so this is by month, right? So this is the fall quarter of 2023. So you can see September was high, October was super high with price drops on listings. What this really says to me more than anything is just that seasonality is back, because it's in a normal real estate world, the season of the fall is a time where we do have less demand, houses sitting on the market a little bit longer. So I wouldn't panic about that, especially if you think about what you've been seeing in this first quarter of 2024. New listings, 2022, they had 5.4 million new listings that year. 2023 is down 4.8 million new listings for the year 2023. Look at the low months. The one thing I want you to think about is look at the low months. So obviously right now we're in the spring season. This is last year, but we're in this season right here, which means demand's generally going to be higher in the spring and summer. So make hay while the sun is shining, y'all, because it is always a good time in the spring and summer to do real estate business. And then think about in the lower months, right? January, February, November, December, the fall, right? That's where the motivated lists, that's where those life reasons are going to drive the moves more, right? Like death, divorce, dilation, downsizing, etc. So the great news is that it won't be worse than last year and we're on the upswing. Woohoo! Distressed sales, not much to talk about here because it's almost non-existent. But 2% in 2023, you saw it was like only 1.3% in Charlotte. And basically underwater homes are the same thing, practically non-existent. Underwater homes, this is good to know, just to know that like, if you're thinking about what's my strategy this year, you probably don't need to stress about getting great at working distressed sales, foreclosures and things like that, because it's just not a big piece of the market right now with people having so much equity in their home. New home starts. So the long-term average is 1 million. So that's an average place that you'll see us hanging out at is about 1 million new home starts a year. You can see there was a little bit less in 2023. Generally speaking, the fun fact here is that we're missing about 2 to 3 million homes that were not built. And the interesting thing too is that they're not building a lot of starter homes, which is a challenge because, new home buyers, first-time home buyers, right? So I want you to think about how can you make a difference? Well, we're each individuals. We can stay in action every day and connect with first-time home buyers. But beyond that, what have you thought about, like, gosh, how can I change my market here? Go pound on the door of your local government and ask about what they're doing for first-time home buyer affordability, because it is something that is so important, not only for like the economy, but for people, right? And to have that opportunity, gosh, I can think back to when Josh and I bought our first home, right? We would not be where we are today in life if we had not had the opportunity to buy our first home in our early 20s. So let's do that. Let's get back there. New home sales. Well, y'all, they moved through the inventory. They moved through the inventory. New home sales are sitting right at the trend line. The thing that I think is interesting here is, as you guys you all know this already from builders and everything, and there's a lot of incentives to move the inventory that builders have. And this is homes that were built to be sold. So when we're talking about new home sales, we're talking about homes that were built to be sold. Because remember that new home starts do not equal new home builds. And new home sales. New home starts do not equal new home sales. Why? It's because there's a lot in here. About 1 million of new home starts includes owner-built homes, custom homes, and rental homes as new homes. And so obviously those are not going to be ever on the market for first-time home buyers or anybody else to purchase. So new home sales is built to be sold. And I think the other thing that's interesting about this, and then we'll move on, is just the fact that the huge building companies are really the ones that are doing well right now because they are able to offer a lot of incentives to move their inventory. And it's the little guy that kind of has gotten stuck on the whole situation. Okay, student debt. We've got a couple more things to get through, and then I'm so excited about what we're going to dig into here in a second, y'all. Get excited. So student loan debt, woo, everybody loves to look at this. It's like, oh, we all probably have felt this pain, or a lot of us anyway. So here's the dilemma. The challenge with student loan debt is just that it's not getting better. The yellow is the same. Okay, so look at this, like student loans are in the blue in trillions. So currently 1.6 trillion. 3.1 trillion is all consumer debt, except for excluding mortgages. So you've got that household debt service ratio. As rates got cheaper, the mortgage debt service got lower, but spending didn't. And it's hard for people to imagine a long-term life. So here's what I'm saying about all this is that it's important to educate ourselves, because what people end up looking at is they're like, gosh, I paid all this money to go to school, and now they have a monthly student loan payment that's the same amount as their mortgage. And they're literally choosing between paying that debt or paying their, like, getting a house, right? And so it really can put people in a challenging place, especially if they're also buying other things too, right? And I think this is why it's just so important to educate ourselves and other people. And it makes me very thankful for the world of Keller Williams, because there's so many things that we can do to help ourselves and others. Like, for example, Quantum Leap. It's such a powerful class that will change your life. There's also Quantum Leap for young adults. Get your family, your friends to that class. Is not just for realtors, and it is so powerful. Oh, this is what I was just saying about the household debt service ratio. So you can see mortgage debt is a huge part of people's homes, but also all that other consumer debt as well, which is really, really challenging to people. And I think it's also important to think about, this is why it's so important to try to help people to invest in real estate, because, over time, it's like the cost of things are going to go up, right? The cost of things are going to go up. And that in real estate appreciates the whole time too. But the foundation of things doesn't really change. When you buy a good piece of real estate, it becomes the foundation for a long-term lifestyle and opportunity. But if you get buried in other things, you can't do that. And of course, we all as individuals have to take control for ourselves, but it's really interesting to know. Okay, let's talk about luxury just for a moment. The world's wealth. I love when they dug into this at Family Reunion, because it's just really interesting. So did you know, first of all, that there's 7.4 million high net worth individuals in North America. And high net worth individuals means, and by the way, you see that number right down here, this is as of 2022, that means they have over $1 million excluding the equity in their home. Okay. Over $1 million of net worth, excluding the equity in their home. I get so excited about that, just thinking about the opportunity that we have here, and that this country and our real estate industry is the best place to build wealth with the most opportunity. You just have to be strategic, right? So high net worth individuals, you can see right here, it shows us where they allocate their financial investment: 50% real estate, 34% cash deposits, and so on and so forth. So it gives you an idea of, like, what does that look like, and how can I build that, and how can I help others build that too? Real estate is a significant part of that, with 15% of their financial investments being there. Now, if you're thinking about the housing market in luxury, here you go, luxury days on market. Of course, the world of luxury and the price point, it is different than days on market with other price points, right? So that's what we're looking at for December. 79 days on market currently is where we're at. So this was December, but currently we're sitting at about 79 days on market, compared to 53 in non-luxury. So they do sit a little bit longer, and definitely there's a strategy to it. I would encourage you, if you are wanting to build a business in luxury, make sure you connect with Christina Lindsay and Ashley Zimke to get to the next luxury community meeting. I know they interviewed Bethana and Drew Choate this last week, and it was so powerful. And there really is a specific strategy to what you need to do to grow that type of a business. And so we can empower you that way for sure. So this just shows you luxury listings with price drops. 14% is where we were at the end of the year. First-time home buyers, again, I'm going to click through these slides so we have time to get to some other things, but that's where we were sitting for 2023, is 32% of buyers are first-time home buyers. It's really important when we're thinking about all the buyer representation things that are going on, how we can continue to support that, because first-time home buyers are some of the people that are going to feel that pain the most, right? When you're thinking about how to pay a buyer's agent and all of that. So I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. So, and by the way, 32% is an all-time low. If you look, that's a low number for first-time home buyers. It basically means that millennials, there's a lot of millennials and also Gen Zers, right, that cannot afford to buy a house. And so it really is something that we've got to think about. And I will say too, the average first-time home buyer is 36 years old, which is 2 times older than in the past, which is bananas to me. Josh and I bought our first home. He was 21, I was 19, which maybe that's young, I don't know. And I don't remember what other people were doing at that time, but like that says so much. And what it really says is that people have different buying habits these days. A lot of people are spending money on experiences versus housing, and it's just something to be aware of. How can we empower more people? Because imagine if you got into a house at 26 instead of 36, how much more could you build your wealth, right? Okay, so how do buyers find their agent? Let's talk about this. This is what gets me so excited about how we can empower ourselves. This should be the blueprint to guide your conversation. And so think about this, in 2023, 43% of people buyers found their agent by being referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. Then 13% use an agent they previously used to buy or sell a home. That right there is over half, 56% of people that found their agent was through a person they knew or they already knew them, right? So that is humongous. 56% of people that are wanting to buy a house are finding that person by relationship. So what does that say? Well, to me, it says the people who avoid contact are going to make the least amount of money. So if you're like telling yourself, I don't like people and I don't want to call people and I don't want to talk to people and I'm not going to text and I'm not going to do a smart plan, we'll make peace with it and understand that that's what it takes to grow your business. Go talk to people, decide to learn to like people, because that is who's going to win right now. And all of us can do that. That is a learned skill. The other thing I think is important to think about with buyer interviews, and here we are, buyer interviews. How many people did people interview before they found their buyer's agent? 2023. 71% interviewed one person and that became their agent. 71%, you guys. 17% for number two, but 71%. You basically need to be the first person they talk to, which how do you do that? You've got to stay top of mind and capture that mind share. And that is truly the name of the game, which is why we talk about the skill-based market is so important. Are your systems tight? Do you have a touch plan that's keeping you top of mind? Are you communicating your value consistently so that when someone hears somebody else wants to buy, sell, whatever, you're who they're calling? And then I will say too, what else to communicate to your buyers and sellers? Well, great to think about the fact that the US hit 27 trillion in equity. Who do you know that has equity in their home right now? Holy smokes. And the other thing about this is the fact that the millennials, which by the way, if you're not sure who a millennial is, it's anyone that was born from 1981 to 1996. They are the largest generation since the baby boomers. And in the next 5 years, all millennials will be in the 32 plus age range and will likely be all of our next buyers. It's going to be a huge time for home purchasing. They'll be hitting their peak earning years. Plus there's that baby boomer inheritance trend that we'll see continue. So I want to shift gears real quick, and then we're going to dive into some really empowering things. But with this being said, talking about be the first person for a buyer to interview and so on. How do you stay top of mind? I think it's really important to be thinking about that customer experience. And one thing that's awesome that we have right now is the Georgia Legacy Group and Carolina Legacy Group. Sam Jackson, our technology trainer, he has created a customized smart plan for you to use, one that is specific to Charlotte, another that is specific to Fort Mill, branded to you in command. And I'm not kidding. I walked my team through how to do this. It took literally 5 minutes. We went and looked up the smart plan. We got our database on the smart plan. And now it was like click, click, click. Everybody's on it, running for the year. You don't have to think about it. Every month, your people that are on that smart plan are going to get a customized, geographic specific customized email newsletter, all branded to you in their email every single month. Plus they get the market watch every single month as well. So they're getting 2 touches from you automatically every single month that's branded to you. That's 24 touches out of your 36 already taken care of to help you stay top of mind. That is huge. So make sure you're using that. It doesn't take any time at all. And the more you're top of mind, the more you're going to be that number one person that buyer calls. Okay. Ben Kinney shared this quote and I loved it. Fear makes the wolf bigger than he is. It's a German proverb. Do y'all feel that? Like I feel that in my soul, y'all. When you focus on something that you're scared of, it just makes it feel worse and harder and more difficult. Can any of y'all relate to feeling that in the industry? Like whether it's the stuff that went on with NAR or that's still going on with NAR or all the other parts of the interest rates and so on and so forth. When you focus on that stuff, it makes it bigger and worse than it is, right? I think the biggest thing to think about that when you're thinking about our role right now and how we continue to build our business intentionally and with purpose is to really, I think it's the time that we have to just be really real with ourselves and understand it's time to skill up and prepare. like, especially because with the changes that are going on with the buyer representation in the NAR settlement, we kind of have a runway, right? We know that changes are likely coming in July. It's not July yet. So we have a runway of time to prepare for any changes coming so that we can be the best of the best. You know, I heard yesterday on something that I was researching around this topic, and expert predictions are saying that by 2025, buyer commissions could be down 20 to 30%. That doesn't mean you need to be terrified. It doesn't mean you're not going to be able to make money. It just means you need to plan for it, and that's okay. We can all still do really well. I mean, think about if that means, you know, your average commission that you normally would take was, you know, I don't know, 7 apples, and it's going to be down 20 or 30%, then maybe it'll be 5 apples. You can still make that work, right? But it's the people that are going to win are the ones that are preparing for the changes and not flying by the seat of their pants. Otherwise, I think the other big thing that we'll see coming is that, oh, well, and we'll talk about that in a second, is that every single buyer likely in the, you know, after July is going to have a buyer's agency agreement prior to showing homes. That doesn't mean you can't do this. It doesn't mean it's going to be not work. It just means you have to be better skill-wise in order to do that. And that's good. Remember, 80% of the things you worry about never even happen. And the 20% that does happen, you couldn't have changed anyways. That's a quote from Zig Ziglar, but isn't it true? So we'll see all of the following things happen in the pending changes. This is from Ben Kinney. I thought it was so true. Sellers will hire agents and negotiate a fee to pay that agent. Buyers will hire agents and negotiate a fee to pay that agent. Sellers will offer concessions for buyer closing costs, and sellers will offer compensation for buyers' agents off MLS. We're going to see all of those things happen. And I think the point of that is that there's lots of opportunities to negotiate between buyers and sellers. There's lots of opportunities to run your business. It simply requires the skills to be stronger, and you can't focus on the wolf, right? The fear makes the wolf grow bigger, right? You just have to put your head down and decide that right now is time to become an expert negotiator. And the best part, honestly, when I think about negotiating your commission is now you have more control. Like, what if you flip the script on yourself, and instead of telling yourself that you're going to be out of control and, oh my gosh, will I even get paid? Now you have more control. You get to decide what you're worth. You get to negotiate with the buyer and with the seller and decide how you get paid. And isn't that super empowering? You control your average listing side commission. You now control your average buyer side commission. Heck yeah, right? And so now with that being said, I want to share some scripts and things that you can say. So when someone says, well, what do you charge? So this is a piece of a script from Ben Kinney, and I'm going to tell you the whole thing, but basically it's I only charge X. All we have to decide is how much we'd like to offer the agent who represents the buyer. So when you're talking with a listing agent, right? Or I mean, with a seller at the listing agent. So here's that in like more the full verbiage I'll give to you, and I'll send these resources to you too. But let's say you're talking with a seller, and that's the question that comes up, right? Like, oh, well, I don't have to pay the buyer agent anymore, right? Or how much are you going to charge? And can I get a discount? And all those things that are happening now. And so here's what you can say. Well, what my data shows is that 95% of all buyers are currently represented by a real estate professional, Susan. So if you want to market your home to the largest pool of buyers, which is going to generate the most activity, the highest price, the most net for you, it's important that we deploy a marketing strategy that markets your properties to those agents that have pre-approved active buyers. So separating the listing side commission from the buy side commission is a really great way to get that consumer out of the mind that Brian is charging 6% to sell this. So what I'm saying is you're basically saying, helping your seller to understand, hey, it's not like we're like, I'm not taking my commission and paying the other person per se, and we can still negotiate and talk about how much we want to do and all of those things. But this gives you an opportunity to have the most eyeballs and market your property to the most amount of people. So there's a lot of new scripts and dialogues around this. I have a whole booklet that I'll send you guys that you can use to help you with some of that verbiage, but that's just a little sampling. And then I loved this, the proper flow of a buyer consult. So if you're like most agents, that when you think about working with a buyer, it means you got in the car with them and showed them some houses. And then when they were ready to make an offer, we wrote the buyer's agreement and put in the offer, right? That's what most people do in this day and age. And that's what's really going to change when you think about working with your clients currently. you do a listing presentation. Well, working with your buyers, it's going to become the same thing on their end too, where you're basically doing a buyer's presentation as well. And so this timeline, which I'll send this to you printable, so you can get the links here and all the resources, but this gives you an idea of what it's going to look like and how you can empower yourself to get that buyer's agency agreement signed and talk about what to do next. This is that seller concession sheet that we talked about again. You guys, I'm so excited about this. I just love a good cheat sheet. And there'll be more details to come on this, but I thought it was really powerful information that can help you. And basically what the experts are saying about this, besides just helping you always have that cheat sheet of like what works for what. And I know it can be confusing to keep up with all that. What we need to know about mortgage going forward and, you know, all of that is between now and July is that a lot of, hopefully, word on the street is that a lot of mortgage programs will allow, are working to be able to allow, if the seller's not willing to compensate the agent, to be able to allow the buyer's agent's compensation to be bundled into the mortgage. Obviously, that's not all set in stone yet, and there's a lot of like limits around that right now. So there's what's called the max seller contributions allowed per loan that I believe are going to change over the coming weeks and months. Some already are in process, but no, you know, nothing solid yet, but really exciting to hear. They're in active communication with the VA, with HUD, with Fannie and Freddie, making sure all the best loan programs are available, because that's the last thing any of us want, right? Is to be working with a first-time home buyer or somebody that's like just barely able to purchase their home. And you as the agent don't want to be like the reason that they can't purchase because they need to pay you, right? And so we don't want to put those people at a disadvantage, right? So it's exciting and encouraging, I think, to hear that those changes are likely coming, and we'll have more details of that very soon. And in the meantime, keep this sheet handy because it's going to be really helpful to be able to reference, especially as those changes begin to come out more and more moving towards July. So there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, but if you go back to this, the power of a buyer consult, you know, we're thinking about these scripts and, you know, what do you say when someone says, well, what do I have to pay you? And all these different things, you know, the reason I'm saying I'm going to send you the dialogues and I'm going to send you these resources is because the goal is that you master your presentations so that you have that buyer broker convo down pat so that it's calm, confident, smooth, your transition to the signature is flawless, right? The way that you don't get the business, when I'm talking about like, oh, you need to skill up and we need to like really have our ducks in a row to take more business, it means like that when someone's working with you, does it feel like awkward and you're trying to fumble through, or does it feel confident and smooth and calm? Like when you're calm, confident, and at ease, so is your client. And that's why it's so important to have all this stuff nailed and prepared and have your listing packet and your buyer's consultation packet and all of those things. And then I wanted to say this too, in case it can empower you guys at all. When I don't have any more slides, there's nothing to look at, but just to listen to this. So it's really interesting to think about, you know, right now you have a huge opportunity to take market share when it comes to mastering presentations. You really, really do. There's so many people that are not going to focus on it at all. They're just going to continue doing what they're doing, either because they just don't feel like it, or they're not getting the resources from their brokerage, or whatever the case may be. And those people are going to struggle. And I want you to think about even going back to that conversation we talked about early on, when a client says that they want to wait for rates to drop. Let's dig into that conversation a little bit more, because this I learned from somebody, and golly, it was so empowering to me, and I hope it can be empowering to you too. So let's go back to that. So they say, you know, we want to wait for rates to drop before we buy a house. You can say, can I show you the math? Like, that's simple. Can I show you the math? I really think the math will help you make an educated decision. You know, there's Goldman Sachs and all these other, Case Shiller and all these other experts are all showing us that home prices are going to go up by 5% this year. So let's look at the cost of the home increase for the home that you're buying. You want to buy a $600,000 home, okay? That's going to cost you $30,000 more if you wait 1 year, because home prices are going to go up by 5%. Just making sure y'all are following me, right? Prices are going to go up 5%, $600,000 house. 30,000 is 5% of that, okay? You want to buy a $600,000 home. That's going to cost you $30,000 more if you wait 1 year. If you wait 2 years, it's going to be $63,000 more. So that's a lot, right? If rates go down by 1%, which you said was your goal, it's going to save you 10% of your monthly payment. 10% of your monthly payment is about $300 a month. This is just based on averages, right? $300 times 12 is $3,600. So you're basically going to save $3,600 by waiting only to pay $50,000 more for a home. Think about that, y'all. Wow. Mathematically, that just doesn't make sense, right? Then you can say, and by the way, here's what I think we should do. Let's get you into that home that you love now, that you can afford, so that you don't have to pay more for it in the future. And here's what I'm going to do. I'll work out a deal with my preferred lender. Well, they'll do your refinance when rates go down for low to no cost. I'm going to try to get that as low as physically possible so that you can refinance without any pain. And here's what else I'm going to do. As soon as rates drop by X%, which is our goal, I'll have a note in my CRM to send you a message that now's the time to refinance. You don't even have to worry about it. Does that seem like a fair option for you and your family to save you more money? I don't know about y'all, but that got me so excited. Like when I heard that explanation of how to explain and talk through the math, I was like, dude, that's how you use this data in actual conversations to empower you and empower your clients. And to really get them past that hump of seeing the forest through the trees. So that's what I have for you guys today. Oh, I'm so excited. We got done with 4 minutes to spare. I was worried I would run out of time. So I hope that was super empowering to you. Does anybody have any comments or anything else that I can share with you today? Comments, questions? Awesome. Well, I hope you guys feel empowered. Keep an eye out in your email. I'll send this recording. I'll also send the slides. And then I'm also going to send a packet of dialogues for you of buyer conversations and seller conversations, that cheat sheet, and all those resources so you can feel super empowered. Oh, Wahida, thanks for that feedback. I'm so glad you felt it was helpful. You guys are awesome. Go kick butt today. Yes, you can get the slides. Absolutely. And thank you guys for being on, and have a great day. Go take market share. Bye.